I feel very honored to have the possibility to open this event. So this is my third time at this event, and it's wonderful to see how it's growing and getting more and more impactful. So my duty this morning is to maybe set the stage and paint a picture of energy storage in the future energy system. And if you talk about energy storage, you talk about flexibility, and that's what I want to do now. Okay. I try to. Well, it worked before. No? Ah, here we go. Oh, now we are very far away, sorry. Okay, let me start by showing you some examples of energy storage, and some of them you know very well. And it's interesting to get a feeling about, let's say, the KPIs, you would say nowadays. So if you talk about the storage in your mobile phone, it's a very small amount of energy. Let's say 15 watt hours or something like that, maybe a little bit more. And the cost is very, very high if you look at it, cost per kilowatt hour capacity, specific cost. Maybe you have in your home a hot water storage. So that is, let's say, a capacity of 20 kilowatt hours. Cost is very much below the cost of the mobile phone, in the range of 50 euros per kilowatt hour. And then you might have an electric car. So if you have a big one, it's 100 kilowatt hours. Cost is around 100, 150 euros per kilowatt hour. If you do the same thing in a stationary battery, interesting, it's a little bit more expensive. That's probably economics of scale. Here you're in the range of 100 megawatts hours now. Cost between 250, let's say 300 euros. And then something very maybe exotic for you, large hot water storage, capacity now really large, 100 of gigawatt hours, and the cost is very, very low, let's say €1 per kilowatt hour. But now I want to talk a little bit about flexibility and storage in the system. Actually, I'm leading a group in the International Energy Agency about flexibility in the energy system, and we try to have a, let's say, a kind of definition for flexibility. And it says energy system flexibility is the ability of the integrated energy system to adjust supply and demand at all times and achieve an energy balance across all time scales in order to integrate higher shares of renewables. So that's very much in line with, let's say, the definition of flexibility in the electricity sector, where you also have to balance it all the time. In former times, it was quite easy because we had a system which was based on fossil fuels, so one solution fits all, centralized systems in order to provide what is needed in the demand sectors here, electricity, mobility, and thermal. In the future, it's much more complex. We will have renewable energies, and renewable energies, they have, let's say, also fluctuations in the supply side, and then we have PV and wind, which is probably the main input in the future, but we have also others. And so that means we have to have a decentralized systems. We have to provide these streams for the demand sectors. So, and the demand itself is also fluctuating. So that means a huge diversity to provide actually what is needed. So if we are not able to provide what is needed at that time, at that place, we have possibilities for flexibility. We can adapt the supply, but that is difficult if you talk about renewable energy sources. So they do what they want. And we can manage the demand, maybe. Also, this is limited. And then there are three things we can do in between. We can change the location. So this is about, for example, the electricity grid. So somewhere else you might need energy at that time. We can have a shift in time. That is exactly what we talk about here today. That's storage. or we can have a shift in the energy form, and I will talk about that a little bit later. So we can transform, let's say, electricity into heat. So this is power to heat or power to fuels and other transformations. Interesting is if you look at the demand side of the energy system and you do it in a global perspective, then you see the share of renewables today is quite high if you look at the power sector. So this is global. 28% are renewable electricity. But if we look at the transport and the cooling sector, the heating and cooling sector, we see that we have a much lower share of renewables. And it's even more extreme if you look at Germany, where we have now over 60% of the electricity comes from renewables, but only 16% renewables are in the heating and cooling sector, and only 8% in the mobility sector. So energy storage, so that's something where we, within this group working in the International Energy Agency on energy storage, we try to talk about this. Think energy storage from the demand side, and I will try to illustrate this with an example. So in general, you have a source, you bring this to the storage, you have different storage technologies, I will talk about it in a minute, and then you provide what is needed. So let's say we have an example, we have PV or wind electricity, we store it in a battery, and then we provide energy to a very specific example. So I picked one now, and I said, okay, I want to look at the industrial drying process. Electricity can provide, let's say, an electric heater, and you can do the drying. But if you now turn it around, so this is a drying process, I said, okay, it's maybe around 150, 180 degrees. If you turn it around and say, okay, I want to pick the energy storage solution according to the demand side. So then again, I start with my drying process, and then I have a very exotic storage technology. It's absorption storage, thermochemical heat storage, and it's mobile. But this storage provides hot and dry air, okay? And I can charge it with electricity. I also can charge it maybe with a thermal source, like solar thermal or waste heat. And the interesting thing is that this technology is much cheaper than a battery. So what I want to say with this example is really look at what you need in the end and not automatically provide what is coming from the supply side. So now I will briefly go through the storage technologies. In general, we have thermal energy storage. This is very interesting. This is a seasonal hot water storage for heating some houses really across the Olympic Park here. So it's very close to here. We have, of course, electrical energy storage, and I think this is the main topic of today. And we have chemical storage. So that is all related to, let's say, hydrogen and other things. As I said before, thermal is in general less expensive, and maybe hydrogen is the most expensive. For electricity, we can store electricity directly, so that is also exotic, I would say. Then we have the electrochemical energy storage, so this is batteries and everything around it. And then we have mechanical storage, we call it. So this is pumped hydro, basically. It can also be compressed air or flywheels. If we look at thermal, we have sensible, so that is really heating up or cooling down something, like hot water, very cheap, very effective. Then we have latent heat storage, if we have a phase change, so that is an ice cube, for example, very simple. And we have these thermochemical, I mentioned before, so let's say more complex and more expensive than hot water, of course. And then if you look at the chemical energy storage, then we have everything with hydrogen, electrolyzers. And we can derive from the hydrogen, go to methane, so treat it like natural gas, or we have synthetic fuels, things like that. So now I would like to talk a little bit about this, what I call transformation in the beginning. So when you go from electricity to another form of energy. So this is a picture here. This is the electricity sector. That's the heat sector. That's the mobility sector. And the main input will come from PV and wind as electricity, and we see it with the numbers of renewables in these sectors. So the highest share is, of course, here. And if we want to decarbonize the other sectors, we have to transform the electricity into heat or into mobility. And by doing this, we can introduce here storage capacities according to the needs of the demand sectors. For example, here chemical energy storage, so this is synthetic fuels, or here thermal energy storage. I want to give you some examples for this. This is the same picture, it looks a little bit different, but electricity here, thermal here, mobility here. And this is an example from the north of Germany where we have a lot of wind, and the wind is transformed, is producing hydrogen, and the hydrogen is used in the mobility sector. Another one is a battery. It's for ultra-fast charging infrastructure. Batteries are installed here, so it's on the way from electricity to mobility, and you have this kind of mobile storage if you want to. Here's an example from Porsche. So that's very interesting because I think in the future we have to adapt the charging infrastructure to the situations we have to face. For example, if you have a rock festival at Nürburgring, and I don't know, 30,000 people want to leave after it's over, and they all go to the first charging station at the highway. They will take a week to get home. So it might be interesting to really provide charging stations where they are needed, so mobile, for example. And the last one is what I talked about, these large hot water storages. So that's very interesting because if you look at the whole system, the energy system, you can provide these incredible high amounts of storage capacity, 200 gigawatt hours. So that's a kind of artificial lake, hot water. It will be covered with an insulation, and it is connected to district heating systems. It can be charged by electricity, by waste heat, by solar thermal, so different sources. So that could be an element of the future energy system, providing a lot of flexibility. Yeah, so I come to the conclusions. Flexibility by energy storage allows to decarbonize all sectors, the thermal, mobility, and the electricity sector, of course. Energy storage allows demand-oriented supply by the best fitting storage technology. So what is needed, energy storage and flexible sector coupling, this is what we call this transformation, allows to match supply and demand in time, and all energy storage technologies will play an important role in our future energy system. And I wish you now a wonderful and inspiring day here, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.